Tonight, Israeli soldiers are searching for people who were taken hostage by Hamas. The Israel Defense Forces said that it has notified the families of 120 hostages taken captive during the attack. My next guest is one of those family members who is desperately holding out hope that the hostages will be found safely. Udi Goren, his cousin, remains missing after an attack on his family's kibbutz near the Gaza Strip. Udi, his wife and young daughter were able to escape Israel on Sunday and are now in Cyprus. Udi, I am so sorry to be talking to you under these circumstances. Are you hearing anything at all about what happened to your cousin Tal?
No, so far we haven't heard anything.
And are you feeling, when you have the Israeli reservists who are mobilizing, they are likely mobilizing, obviously, for an incursion and what could be happening in Gaza. It could be imminent. Without hearing any information about Tal or any of the others, are you worried about what this means for your cousin's safety?
Of course I am. I'm not worried. I'm terrified. Because, for example, Tal, the last time his phone was located, was in southern Gaza. So maybe he was moved to the north and then they're going to find him. Maybe he's going to be the first guy to be found in the first house they go into. But maybe as his captives see the army is coming, they're going to execute him and run away. That's also very plausible.
This must be just the thought of that and having to think about those possibilities. It's unimaginable to so many people to think that that has to be anticipated. There must have been such an emotional evolution and toll this is taking on you and your family. What has this been like?
I can only describe it as sitting on the edge of an abyss full of sorrow and grief. That's really what it feels like for most of the time.
Your mother's whole family, I understand, was living in the kibbutz, and you were texting with them as the attack unfolded. Can you describe what that moment was like?
You know, these people have been living there their entire lives. They've been through all the assaults from Gaza, all the incursions, everything. They are very tough people. And you know, as we were texting with them, you couldn't tell what they were going through at those very moments. Only later did we find out that my mom's cousins, people in their 60s, were locked in their bomb shelters, fighting with terrorists on the outside, inside their homes, fighting with terrorists to hold the door locked, literally holding the door locked for their lives. Because had people gone in, well, we know how that ended for other people.
We're hearing all these reports, Udi, about a potential response on the ground in Gaza, the imminence likely of violence. There's conversations about civilian casualties. You believe that perhaps the violence we're seeing, though, from Israel and Gaza will backfire on the Israelis. Why do you think that?
I don't believe it. I know so for a fact. You know how I know it? Because ever since the disengagement from Gaza in 2007, we have seen rounds of violence every 2 years at first, then every year, and then every 5 to 7 years, something major. And every time it gets worse. So, you know, history doesn't tell us it's going to repeat itself for sure, but we can assume that it's just going to be the same. I mean, what's going to change? What is going to change after this? So, I mean, you have very intelligent people in the studio right now, and I want to thank Mr. Clapper for his very poignant points about putting things to, you know, really kind of describing what it is on the ground. What does it mean when they say, you know, 1.1 million people need to evacuate? Just imagine telling 80% of the residents of the Bronx, you need to leave in 24 hours. Even the US can't do it. And again, you know, all of this, I'm making a point because I want to refer to Mr. Blinken, and I don't think there's an Israeli right now that doesn't appreciate him being in Israel and standing by our side, not hesitating for a second to say that the U.S. is backing us up. We are very, very appreciative. But I want to quote what he says, that the value that we place on human life and human dignity, that's what makes us who we are. And I think he is 100% right. It's the life of everyone, not just my cousin. It's the life of Gazan civilians who have done nothing wrong. And it's the life of the other 150 hostages who are being held there. As a Jew, our Bible says that whoever saves a life, it's as though he had saved the lives of all men. So is Israel willing to give up some of the lives of the hostages? Is my cousin less important than anyone else? And what about the soldiers that are going to go on the ground? I would please offer you to ask the experts what happened in the last incursions when Israel went into the Palestinian cities, when entire buildings were rigged, when dozens of soldiers were killed, when people, even if they didn't lose their lives, they stayed there for the rest of their lives because of PTSD. The meaning of saying Israel is going into Gaza is, I wouldn't say it's a suicide mission, but it's not far from there. My other cousin, I have more family. My other cousin's son is in the army. He might be the one going into Gaza. His life is no less important than my other cousin, who is now being held hostage. I don't want to risk one life for another.
Yeah. Udi, your words are so poignant, and you know what I'd like to do, Udi Goran, and thank you for being here. I want to turn those questions that you have that are so important to the experts here in this studio as well, because we are thinking of what you are saying, and we're taking it very seriously. Let's just open it up right now, gentlemen, because you heard what Udi is speaking about, and of course this conundrum, for lack of a better word, of what you do, the value of the cost-benefit analysis of war and the strategies of what comes next. There are hostages on the ground. There is an incursion or invasion that may be imminent. What goes through the strategist's mind?
The strategist has already established what he or she wants to achieve. And I think it's a far-reaching goal, which is the elimination of Hamas. As you look at what is going to occur on the ground, you can speculate. I think Hamas will be bloodied. We've discussed what the civilian casualties will look like. This will be brutal. But I think that Hamas, in some form, will probably survive.
On the hostage rescue issue, even SEAL Team 6 can kill inadvertently hostages when they go in. And obviously the hostage takers themselves can kill the hostages. And actually, I looked at a data set of about 42 cases where Westerners were taken by terrorist groups. In 20% of the cases, the hostages were killed. So this is a very dangerous moment when you obviously only mount that operation if you think the hostage is potentially, that life is in danger. So anyway, it's very, very tricky. And I understand that, Tony Blinken's visiting the Qataris. The Qataris do have some leverage with Hamas. They do have a record of getting American hostages out. They were instrumental in getting the 5 Americans out of Iran last month. So that is a vector where there could be a peaceful resolution for some of the Americans, and also other Westerners have been held by Hamas or other terrorist groups.
And I would just add that Israel has had a history of taking great risks to rescue its hostages, and including paying a big price for prisoner exchanges. In 2011, it was actually Prime Minister Netanyahu who negotiated through intermediaries with Hamas to release one Israeli captive soldier, Gilad Shalit, in exchange for over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, including many with blood on their hands. This situation seems different. We're talking about 150 hostages. They are clearly not in one location. Islamic Jihad, for example, claims to hold about 30 of them. And the priority here seems to be a military victory, which supersedes every other consideration. And I'm hoping that they'll be able to rescue some, if not all, the hostages. But it seems to be a very tall order.
I mean, this paints a very
Mr.
bleak
Goren,
picture.
or I think he asked the key question: what's going to change? So by this strategy, whatever it is, are we simply going to, even if we kill every last Hamas terrorist there, are we now going to spawn even more because of the treatment that these Palestinians already, which has been terrible, as a result of this operation, are you going to spawn more terrorists? So I think the question is, what's going to change is key.
I mean, the policy implications and all you describe, it's terrifying, frankly, to think about, and sadly the reality of war. But in the immediacy of whatever operation has to occur to achieve that directive, we've been seeing the sea, right? We've been talking about what's going on in land and the air, but we also know there are aircraft carriers. There is the sea that borders. Tell me about what you think a military operation is going to be looking like to accomplish the directive in light of what we've discussed.
Well, what the United States has done is that they've already moved the Forward Carrier Battle Group into the Eastern Med. That's primarily to send a signal to Iran. But the tactical and operational requirements that we're looking at will be, I think, as a planner, I would think that there would be Israeli Navy patrol boats of some sort on the coast of Gaza, blockading. They have gunfire capabilities. They've got the ability to go after very specific targets. I do think that once a ground assault occurs, I think it'll come not only from the north of Gaza, from Israel directly down, and there also, I think, would be an assault from the Wadi Gaza, from the kind of the west to the east to the sea. So you have Israeli forces coming across in that direction toward the sea. You would have Israeli forces coming down from the north. They link up, and then the Israelis would begin the assault on targets that they know where they can go after the command and control facilities for Hamas and simultaneously begin hopefully the rescue operations of the hostages. But I think what we're seeing right now, unless this assault takes place today, I mean, it certainly could take place at any time, but I'm sanguine that maybe what we've been discussing is what's taking place right now, which is the anticipation. Is there a scintilla of hope that there might be some type of a negotiation? Are we at the point where the Qataris and the Israelis and Hamas might be able to have a discussion about release and a trade-off?
Possible? The idea of diplomacy, is that possible still? I asked the question not rhetorically, but the pregnant pauses speak volumes, frankly, given all that we've seen, I guess.
I mean, that's why Tony Blinken is going on the most, the largest Middle East tour he's ever embarked on, right? I mean, clearly there is an effort. And he speaks for President Biden. Everybody knows that.
General Marks, Director James Clapper, Peter Bergen, Guy Ziv, thank you all so much. Your expertise really has been invaluable and will continue.